Hi, my name is Chris Campbell, and I am the Health and Wellness Coordinator over at Area 10 Agencies Enright Center in Ellettsville, and also our new center at the mall on the east side called the Active Living Center. And today, what I want to talk about is, it's getting warmer as we get into these warmer days and season. People start thinking about going outside and doing more activity, be it hiking or biking, walking, or maybe even yard work or um, landscaping, mowing, different things like that. Or maybe even getting into something like pickleball, maybe trying something new like some pickleball or adult soccer or adult volleyball outside, frisbee golf, disc golf, so something outside. So thought I would talk about a little bit how to prepare yourself for that and to minimize. The whole idea is to minimize injury as you get excited about doing things outside and want to do outside things, but maybe your body isn't quite ready to do that yet. So first thing I want to say is just that you know, outdoors is wonderful. Wonderful to be outside, getting fresh air, sunshine. It's good for your physical health. It's good for your mental health. So again, the idea here is to get you to be able to be outside and enjoying all of that and getting all the perks of that, but not to have injuries and things that keep you or that may slow you down or cause you a grief in your life. So we wanted to go that route today. So first thing that I would ask you if I was talking with you is, where is your fitness level right now? What is your strength? What is your flexibility? What is your cardiovascular endurance right now? So if you've been, active during the winter months, staying very active, whether it's on a treadmill or a bicycle inside, or whether you've been outside walking, you may have some pretty good vascular endurance. Have you been doing strength training, yoga, maybe a balance class or something where you do some strength training? Tai Chi even, to keep your strength up. And what about your flexibility? Same thing. Have you been doing some Tai Chi, yoga class, balance class, or some just individual stretching? So first thing I would want to do is take inventory of where you are as far as those three um, factors. And that kind of tells us where you're going to start. So you may end up starting right there with um, making sure you're getting out and getting some activity that involves some cardio, involves some strength, involves some flexibility, and not getting too gung ho about going all out with some activities when your body's not ready for it. So take inventory of that for yourself, and then when it comes going forward, the other thing is obviously I want to know what your goal is. Are you planning to just take up walking, hiking outside? Get on the bike? Are you planning to do yard work? Are you planning to play some sort of a sport? And makes a difference, not as far as that basic fitness, because the basic fitness, we really want you to go ahead and have that. But if not, you need to build that up for a couple of weeks. It would be really nice before you get into any activity. That basic fitness that I talked about. Um, but on top of that, we would want to add in some special activities if you're going to do something, especially if it's something like pickleball, or disc golf, volleyball, or some of these sports that may involve a little bit of rapid movement, side to side movement. So, so what are your goals? What are your plans? And where are you starting? So that's where we'll start. So, so again, assuming that you now know that you have to get some of that cardio in, the strength, the flexibility. If you haven't been doing anything, I'd highly recommend you building up your aerobic capacity from maybe 5 minutes of walking or 5 minutes of on the exercise bike up to about 30 minutes if you can. And that's a slow build, a little bit each, every other day or third or fourth day, going a little bit farther, try to build that up. Strength training every other day, 3 times a week, doing your push-ups, doing your pull-ups, doing it in an exercise class or on the machines, working on that strength. and working on the stretching flexibility. So I would do that every day. 20, 30 seconds on a hold. And if you're interested in any of those types of things, can definitely be helpful as far as helping you get that basic fitness level to get to where you can do some of these activities. So, so once you're past that, again, I want to talk about some of these activities and specifically and where you might go from there. And I'll start with walking. As far as walking, we have I have a video, another video that talks about beginning a walking program, which I would highly recommend you watch that video. And I'm not going to repeat all of the same information here, but as far as getting up and getting started on a walking program, some things that I will say is, like I said, is to make sure that clothing, shoes are important, and making sure you've got very comfortable shoes, very good, got good support for your feet, good padding as far as your sock absorption, and good shoes that are actually made for walking, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Not shoes that are made, wear shoes that are made for something else. Definitely don't wear flip-flops and sandals, unless they're sandals made for walking. Dress shoes, things that you'd wear to work. So basically, I think pretty common knowledge to make sure you actually do have some walking shoes. And running shoes may work fine for you. You might want to be careful with that and make sure you're not walking a lot of miles in them. See how that goes. But so the thing about walking too is again, you want to build up slow. If you're not been walking at all, 5-10 minutes, and build up a little at a time. That doesn't always have to be in a linear progression. Sometimes you may build up a little bit, it may slack off, it may go downhill a little bit. Maybe you were sick, maybe you were busy for a couple of days, you didn't walk, so you might go back down a little bit. And then you can also keep in mind something we call a hard easy principle. You may walk a little bit farther one day, next day you may walk a little bit lighter as far as not as far. Build it back up the next day, then back down again, and not always go the same hard walk every day. Give yourself a chance in the between to rest up. It might even be 2 days in between. You may walk a good long, hour-long walk. This is eventually, not at first. You may walk a really long walk one day. The next day you may walk 15, 20 minutes. Next day you may walk that 45 minutes again. The next day you may walk 2 days. You may walk 15, 20 minutes again, then go back up to a longer walk. Give your body a chance to rest in between and not to have too much work on your joints. As far as if you're going to do hiking outside of just regular walking, some things to keep in mind too. First of all, with the regular walking, what kind of surface are you walking on? Maybe you'd be best to stay on something nice and smooth and flat. If you have access to a track, high school track, junior high track, I would recommend that before even going out on the sidewalks of the streets, as far as some cushioning. And I would also recommend, if you're going to do that, to go 3 laps one direction and 3 laps the other direction, or 1 lap one direction, 1 lap the other direction, back and forth. And that just helps you with the hips that are maybe, and also plan on walking on the outside of the track, so you're not making too many turns to the right or too many turns to the left. But so surface is very important. And if you have access to walk on the trail, I don't mean trails like out in the woods, but I mean a trail that's kind of like a soft padded small rock trail, or something that's got a little bit more cushioning to it. You might find that that's even better. If you have a hard time with some of those hard surfaces like the mall walking or street, especially sidewalk walking, you might want to try to find yourself some lighter, some softer surfaces to walk, and you might find that's better. However, if you have issues with balance, you might want to be really careful about getting on those softer surfaces. Make sure you're not getting to a place where it's just way too soft, and you can fall. So that's what I'm saying. When you go into the hiking, you are getting off of those surfaces. You're getting to more rugged terrain. You may have slippery surfaces, mud, leaves, wetness, roots, sticks, things to trip over. So a little bit more tenuous as far as the safety there, as far as that, but very doable. There, obviously you also possibly have steeper uphills, downhills, but very doable. One thing that I would highly recommend if you're going to be walking outside, and especially on trails off road, but even if you're on the street, it's something that you could still use. But I highly recommend walking poles, and I'm just going to call them walking poles. Some people use 2 poles, they call them trekking poles. Some people just use 1 pole. If you're on a trail, if you're out on the trails, the reason you would use this as far as just for outdoor everyday walking is it does provide you with a little bit of stability, some security there as far as balance, and also takes a little bit of pressure off those knees, especially on some downhill sections and stepping down steps or downhill. So very useful. Also, just as far as just helping you, giving you that third leg if you start to slip and you catch yourself in things like walking through sections where there are a lot of rocks or roots, and just giving yourself that little extra to keep yourself upright. So very useful. I'm going to show you one and show you how to use it. You can see this pole. There are a lot of different types of poles out there, and basically you can find them most sporting goods, and you can buy them online, of course, these days. But with a pole, this one is an adjustable pole. Very good to have something that is adjustable. And when you find a pole, you just want to, when you use it, you want to make sure that when you're got a hold of your handle and your arms down onto the poles, the tip of the pole is on the ground, that your arm is about 50 degrees or 90 degrees, sorry, here in your bend of your elbow. Okay, so if you would happen to, be looking at one that's not adjustable, you would want to make sure then that you are getting the right size for your height. And like I said, this is adjustable in 2 different locations. And the thing about it is you can make them a lot smaller so that you could get this one down, obviously small enough to finally be able to put it in your backpack or put it in your car without having it stick out the window and things. So they're pretty lightweight. Like I said, there are some that are more of the curved handle, a little bit more anatomically correct, I guess you'd say. Some of them, the more straight up handle, different types of handles, different types of materials. You could do the research into them if you looked at getting them. I use 1 all the time, and sometimes I will use 2, depending on the surfaces. If you decided to use 1 and you're going to be on pavement, you can buy different tips for pavement, different tips for trails, different tips for snow, different things like that. So very useful and not very costly at all. Something that would be great to have to be walking, even if you're just not out on trails, but you're just, sometimes you may go through the yard or through pine leaves or pine needles, or someplace even could be a little slippery. So another thing about walking, I'll just talk about clothing. Ideally with clothing, as it's getting warmer, you want to have something breathable, something loose, something that protects you from the sun, and moisture wicking. These days, a lot of good fabrics out there. And another thing to keep in mind is if you're going to be walking early in the morning or late in the evening around traffic areas, and maybe have something that has some reflective stripe on it, or get yourself a reflective stripe for your wrist or for your ankles. So if you're going to be someplace where there might be traffic. So as far as walking, hiking, another thing to keep in mind, obviously, is the sun spray and sunscreen and bug spray and that type of thing. And hats, ticks, and all those types of things. But let's talk a little bit about gardening and yard work. So that adds a little bit more of another factor here, because a lot of times with gardening and yard work, unless you do a lot of housework during the winter months, you're probably not, your body's not used to doing this type of motion. You may walk around quite a bit. You may walk around because you go to Lowe's, or walk around because you go to the grocery store, or walk back and forth to the mailbox. So the walking may not be too much for you to get into a walking routine in the spring, but or you may have been walking on the treadmill. When it comes to yard work, especially if it comes to raking. A lot of people start doing that, and I guess more in the fall, but sometimes they're raking in the spring because you got leaves that have just kind of piled up all winter. So if it comes to raking and cleaning out beds and things like that, it comes to a lot of lifting, like leaning over, moving things, carrying heavy bags, a lot of bending over and a lot of getting down and pulling and doing things like that. Your body's not used to that if you weren't doing that all winter. So that's the one thing I want to try to just kind of, like I said, talking about that basic fitness that we talked about earlier with the strength, flexibility, and cardio. But here you have another aspect, and some of it is flexibility. Some of it is, yes, being flexible enough to bend down and being strong enough to be able to pull back and to carry things. But another thing to keep in mind is that not only is that flexibility and that strength, but also is to remember to progress carefully. That first couple of days when it's nice out and you're so excited to get out there and start doing some things in your yard, that's when you have to have the wherewithal to say, give yourself a lecture and say, no, do not go out there for 2 hours that first day and do this type of thing, because your hamstrings will be tight, because you did all that bending over, your lower back, arms and shoulders. A lot of things can be hurting, hopefully not hurt badly, but at least being painful or unhappy with what you did. So we want you to pace yourself a little at a time, taking breaks, go out, do a little bit, come back in, do something different, even relax in the lounge chair. Believe it or not, you've got permission to just sit in the recliner for a while, go out and do some more a little bit later, and just really spacing it out at first and not doing too much in one big segment is going to be really great for keeping you from being uncomfortable. So another thing that people don't think about too much is warming up and cooling down from yard work. But if you're going to go out and do a lot of moving, lifting, pulling weeds, carrying things down on the ground, I would recommend you go for like a 5 or 10 minute walk at first and just warm up, and then go ahead and do some of that stretching. Stretch out that lower back, those hamstrings, quads. And if you don't know the stretches, we'll be doing stretches on videos here, and we take you through a whole list of stretches in my balance class. You're welcome to check out one of the videos as well. But I would highly recommend doing some warming up, a little bit of stretching as you get going. And then I would recommend at the end of it, the same thing. I would do some stretching at the end when you get done. So that at the same time would help you keep from being, feeling bad after the day after being yard work. We'll remind you over and over again not to get too excited and go too fast, too much, too fast, because that's what's going to get you. Another thing to keep in mind is that we've all learned those good postures when it comes to how to carry things, how to lift things, how to do movements. So this is a good time to pay close attention to that. If you haven't been doing much as far as carrying, lifting, pulling, pushing, and then you get out in the yard and you start doing that kind of thing, you're setting yourself up for some possibly serious injuries, especially like to the back. So getting yourself in shape for it, warming up, stretching, pacing yourself, taking breaks in the middle are all going to be important. But also while you're doing it, being very, very mindful of how you're lifting, lifting with the legs, not the back, or how we learned, carrying loads close to the body, getting help, and not lifting things and moving things around that you shouldn't be doing by yourself. So those types of things I'll just remind you like I said, we get excited with the nicer weather and we want to do things, but good time to put the rein or pull back the reins on yourself just a little bit and move ahead very cautiously. So on the gardening yard work, I think I've mentioned everything. When it comes to sports, so I mentioned the sports. So great time to get out and get active as far as getting involved in a new sport. Maybe you decided you want to learn to play pickleball or play disc golf this spring. play some adult soccer. There are leagues for all different ages and abilities. Maybe you decide you want to get back on the bike again. Some of these things take a little bit more skill. So you don't want to only have the basic fitness, and you also want to have some skill as far as, don't say you want to have some skill, but you want to build on that skill and some special motions that you might do. One thing to keep in mind for these types of activities is very much more important to make sure you have good shoes for these types of things. If you're going to play pickleball, I wouldn't recommend playing pickleball with running shoes. Same with volleyball. I would wear some shoes that are made for court use. Much better, much less likely you're going to twist your ankle. So I would definitely go and you don't have to spend a lot of money, but just go ahead and get a basic pair of shoes that you would use on a court if you're planning to play. And with things like volleyball, you have some really quick motions and quick side to side. Same with pickleball, with disc golf. You don't have that as much, but you do have a lot of this motion. And this motion, you may be able to do it 2 or 3 times, but you go out on that course that first day and you haven't been doing that. And the next day, you will feel it. You will feel it in that arm, that shoulder, that lower back. So again, I would highly recommend using caution as far as doing something that you haven't been doing very much of it at least. And practice those motions before you even get out there. Practice them for the week ahead of time. Practice that motion of throwing that disc, picking that disc up off the floor or the ground even, and picking it back up. So when it comes to pickleball and volleyball, like I said again, if you're playing on a court shoes, you're going to be doing a lot of motions that are side to side, and maybe up off your feet a little bit. So it's a little bit of a jumping, even hopefully not too much of a jumping, but even just a little bit of a jumping. So you do want to make sure you've got good shoes. You want to make sure you've warmed up well before playing. You want to make sure your knees are healthy for such things. Or maybe you need to get into the gym and do some knee strengthening exercises and some really good exercising before you even do some of those types of activities. I would highly recommend making sure your knees, your hips, everything are in pretty good shape before you put them through volleyball or soccer or pickleball. Doesn't mean you can't do it. I would just recommend kind of being a pre-season training, just like the pro athletes do before you get into those sports, so you don't end up hurt. It's the same thing that I tell people that are we call them weekend warriors. It's like don't do anything during the week. And on a weekend, you want to go out and play flag football, or you want to go out and play some kind of a sport like I've mentioned, and you're just really setting yourself up for injury. So as we get older, we're going to be higher tendency to have injuries, but we don't want that to keep you from getting out and being active and getting out and enjoying the outdoors and all the emotional benefits of just the whole thing of being outside. So, but I just want you to be really careful with it and, get yourself in shape to do whatever activity you're going to do. Make sure you've got, the right clothing, the right shoes to keep yourself comfortable and safe, keep yourself protected from the sun, protected from vehicles. If you're going to be doing something, again, if you're on a bike or walking and you're going to be around vehicles, make sure you've got reflective clothing on. Lights, if you're going to be even lights, you can buy lights to use on your bike or lights to use when you're walking, if you're going to be walking after dark or even when it's getting close to dark, because cars still have a hard time seeing you, even if you think it's not dark yet. People that are driving still may have trouble seeing you. So that's important to have a little bit of a light. Very easy to get, very cheap. So those types of things, as far as also making sure that you have the right equipment, if it's something that you need to use, and as far as tools go, as far as, like say you were going to be a pickleball player or a biker, you have, how to use your equipment. You have the right size for what you need. The right size of bike can put you in danger if you had a bike that was way too big for you, for example. And so basically what it comes down to is, being smart as far as your preparation, your preseason, being smart, and then also being smart as far as your activity and what you're doing, how you're doing it, how much you're doing it, that type of thing. And other than that, it's just a matter of just enjoying yourself. Just get out there and enjoy yourself. Be safe, be smart, be prepared, and have a good time enjoying the outdoors. So I'd be glad to answer any questions anybody has. You'd like some help with designing your program, help with learning how to use walking sticks, help with setting up your bicycle. Say you want to get a new bicycle and you want to start riding. We have biking groups. We have hiking groups here with Indirect Centers. We also have a balance class that does, we do kind of a warm up. We do strength exercises, balance type exercises, and we do a cool down and stretching. Would be a great place to start if you're just trying to get yourself ready to go to get into shape and to be all around, like I said, those all around more fit for this type of activity. So again, let me know if you need anything. And other than that, enjoy the great outdoors.